Well, folks, we're going to have a little bit of a talking show today. I'm going to be talking with my new friend Jody, and let's just see where this goes. How are you, Jody? Nice to meet you. Why don't you tell everybody where you're from?
I am from rural Northern California. I'm in the walnut, almond, and fruit orchards. So I
Uh,
live in a small, yeah, I live in a small rural community. Probably in with all the little communities, probably 40,000 people.
oh, nice, nice.
Yeah, I actually grew up in California, but I've lived everywhere. I mean, well, not everywhere, but I was in the Navy. Then I was married to um, someone who was in the Marine Corps. And then, so I've
That,
lived.
that dude behind me was a SEAL.
Oh, really? Oh,
Yeah,
really? Okay.
yeah.
Okay.
I'm getting
Yeah.
I'm getting castaways now from the U.S.
Oh, are you?
Yeah,
Yeah. No, it's funny. My oldest daughter had her wedding in Mexico in June, and it was horrible. It was so hot.
yeah,
It was just too hot. Like we went to the cenotes and I just wanted to live in there because I couldn't handle the heat. And it's hilarious because I live in a place that through mid-July through September is over 100 degrees every day, but it's a dry heat. So
yeah. Do you have a bit of elevation? Are you up in the mountains?
no, I'm only about 50 feet above sea level. I'm in the Central Valley. So if you know where the Bay Area is,
Yeah.
if you head north on I-80, um, and then take a few roads, I'm probably 2 hours from San Francisco.
Oh,
So
okay. Yeah.
yeah,
You like it
yeah.
there?
Um, well, it's not everything that people say it is, right? I mean, when you talk about fruits and nuts in California, it is nutty. The government here is nutty, Trudeau level nutty.
Yeah.
But like where I live, you see Trump flags, you see most like there's a huge Latino population here who are completely apolitical.
Yeah.
Um, right. So, I
Do
mean,
they do
California.
do they do the orchard work?
Um, you know, um, they build my fence and right. I mean, they're no, I mean possibly I think migrants do that to be quite honest with you.
Yeah.
Um, um, but no, they're they're really good neighbors. Let's just put it that way. They're super good neighbors. Um, everyone is it's just different. You think about like I lived in Sacramento, which is the capital city of California.
Hmm.
And it's yucky. Like the vibration is
Yeah.
yucky. And so
Yeah.
my some of my family lived there, and I hate going there. I hate going there. And so at first I was like, oh, it's just the traffic. I'm not used to the traffic anymore. And that's just BS. It's just ooky. Um, so there's a you were I don't know when you were talking about this, but you had said that the more compacted cities get, there's about 1 million people in the Sacramento metro,
Yeah.
and the more compact things get, um, the more dense the energy is. Like it's
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
So it's a little lighter out here. If I had my choice, I'd live up in the Sierra Nevada,
Yeah.
but it's too expensive. So I needed to buy a house, um, because a mortgage is cheaper here than rent. And so I got a very tiny little house on a tiny little piece of property. I have gardens, chickens, many cats and dogs. And so I'm a hermit out here, you know.
Yeah. Me too. And to to further that, like I speak Spanish all day. The only time I speak English is on air, and then since my friend came, but like I speak Spanish all day. So people don't realize like what that's like. Now, this is the second time I've done this. The other time I spoke Mandarin all day when I lived in Taiwan. And
Mm,
so when you do that, when you go somewhere and you learn a new language and it becomes your daily language, there's a complete transformation of your consciousness. It's like an initiatic process because people don't realize that languages are not systems of communication, they're systems of thought. And so if you want to
mhm,
understand a people, you have to understand their language. And so
right.
I I have just fallen in love with Latino culture. It's just absolutely so well, at least where I live. I
Mhm.
think Mexico might be a bit more horrid, but um Costa Rica, it's just so beautiful.
Well,
I just
there,
love it.
there's so many people out there who, the I call them the new agers, and I don't want to come hard on them because some new agers kind of helped me through a strange path that I was on
Yeah,
over but they're always talking about thought. You have to remove all thoughts. You have to go throughout your day without thinking. And while I agree with that to a certain point, thoughts are just there. They're
yeah,
going to happen. And it's more about ignoring the thoughts. Like,
yeah,
and sometimes I don't know if this happens to you, you'll get and my reaction is, how stupid is that? That's the most, and that makes me think, that wasn't me. I get those thoughts like, oh, that wasn't me, right?
yeah,
But what they do is they say, speak, word bells and all of that. And it's like, well, yes, but words are also vibration. That's what your throat does. It
yeah,
it it vibrates sound, and
yeah,
that's what makes us above. Not. I think they speak too, but we're able to articulate our thoughts,
yeah.
and so I and like one of the ways. So here's I'm gonna maybe I'm getting off topic.
No, no, whatever we want to talk about.
Okay. So I have something and I never knew I had it. So when I meditate and I close my eyes and I sit back, all I see is, and when the meditation person says, imagine you're walking through a beautiful meadow. I don't see the meadow. So I have something, you may have heard of it. It's called aphantasia. And all that means is my mind's eye doesn't provide me pictures. I can't explain how it is, right? And some people think, oh, that's bad. But actually, kind of a lot of people have it. There's like groups out there, they're studying it. And so when I meditate, it's more of a contemplation. It's
Yep,
more having to sit down, my eyes have to be open, and I have to, well, sometimes lately I have to concentrate on breathing and sound. But
yep,
yeah, so when I have when I use my imagination, um, it's impossible to explain how it works in there. But the way I get it out is by writing. Now, I am not even remotely close to being the wordsmith that you are, by the way. I wanted to tell you, I just finished reading The Devil
that's
in Us.
that's only because I've wasted tens of thousands of hours on it. If I right,
Right.
so but thank you for saying that. It's, that's nice.
Well, no, I have a feeling even when you talk. So the when you're speaking is especially, when you're doing it by yourself and you're kind of discussing right now that book, what you're do it you're able to express verbally what you're expressing in the book, and it can be mesmerizing in a way, like, oh, so I have to I'll because I don't always agree with you,
Yeah,
but um it's still I don't mean to, but anyway, so the way we'll go back to the way I think. So I have to write, and I have many, many, many journals, and that's actually how I speak to you call it the creator. I always refer to it as source. So I guess if we were to get our vocabulary right, when I refer to source, I'm referring to the one, the creator of all
yeah,
things, right?
yeah.
So yeah. So I
So
have,
what do you write? Just journals?
well, for several years, I was having a lot of spiritual experiences.
Yep.
huge, huge experiences, like material experiences, many inner experiences. And I would write them out. And so what that does for me is it gets me to which is just like anytime writing in a journal, you just write out what happened and then you stew in it and then you say maybe this is what it was. And then I use those journals when I would go back and I would have another awakening. It's like, my daughter describes awakening as, when you go to the eye doctor and they put that thing and they
Yep.
click. That seems like to be what awakening is. It's like, oh yeah, that's yes, no. And so as it all became, oh, it was very encompassing for me. So then I could use my journals to go back and I actually write notes. No, that's not true. This is what was happening here. So I have, oh, how do I put this without sounding schizophrenic?
There's no such thing as schizophrenia. There's no such thing.
Right.
Yeah.
So on about 5 years ago, it was 5 years ago, um, I I had some experiences that told me some things were in my house. I was living here at the time. I was living in a small apartment. My one of the I'm going to interrupt myself. So one of the things that really resonated with me in your book is the fact we're pretty close in age. Um, is when I was reading about your childhood, I was just nodding my head. Yep, yep. Now all of the trauma came from my mother. Um, but it was just so it was like reading until you turned 17. You turned 17 and you turned in meditation. I turned 18 and went into the military. Oh boy, right?
Yeah.
Um, so we kind of separated, and I was telling my daughter last night, I said, I spent my 20s having children, being a stay-at-home mom. I spent my 30s being a single mom and working on a career. And then I jumped off the cliff of darkness in my early 40s and then climbed out of an abyss into awakening. And I firmly believe that every experience that I've had in this life, each different one, like I can tell people stories and they'll be like, wait a minute, I thought you said you were a stay-at-home mom. Oh no, that was back then. It's almost as if every 10 years somebody new was dropped into my body. It was very, and I can bring all these experiences together. But when I was, so I'm 55 now. So when I was 49 or 50, I kind of crawled out of this abyss and started a series of awakenings. And I started to notice things happening in my life. Like, so I had kind of screwed up my career, which is kind of a good thing because what I was doing was I was a human resources analyst for the state. And I think getting out of that bureaucracy
Yeah.
was very positive for me. The way
Yeah.
I went about it was pretty awful. But I was like, oh my gosh, what do I do? What am I going to do for a job? Right. And then I got, uh, so in the US military, when you are injured during service, um, you get benefits if you can prove it, right? Oh, you have to prove it.
Yeah.
So I had experiences in the military that caused pretty a lot some damage, and so somebody had said, "Why don't you go to the VA and tell them about this?" So I applied for disability benefits, and usually you have to apply and apply and apply and apply, and then you have to consistently, like, it can take years to prove that you have these injuries. And 3 months later, they gave me a 100% permanent and total. And what that means, your friend will tell you that what that means is I don't have to work.
Yeah.
Um, I don't have to work, and I'm not poor at all. Um,
Good for you.
Yeah, so there's no doubt in my mind. I mean, I'm not, to me, lying or anything like that. It's kind of like there's a thing going around that all veterans are liars because they're getting money and all of that. But that's neither here nor there. We won't get into that. But I mean, to me, it was like, wait a minute, what? I had only expected a small stipend to hold me over, until I could find work. And then I was able to purchase a home. And so all of these things were happening for me. And my friends called me the luckiest person in the world. How are you the luckiest person in the world? And so then I started spending all my time alone meditating,
Yes.
reading. Um, I started with the Bhagavad Gita, read that a couple of times. Um, Pretty overwhelming, to be quite honest with you.
Yep.
Um, and what I reread some gospels. Here's, I've been a member of two major religions in the United States. Um, and so I kind of went to Jesus again, but Jesus since my 30s has been kind of a turnoff for me based on religious trauma, maybe. I don't think that anymore. I think the Christ is real,
Yeah.
or was real. A great teacher. Um, but then for me, I found um, I I was just voraciously reading everything, and I found you might flip out. I found the Kabbalion,
Yeah.
and
Kabir, right? No, no,
the three initiates, the Kabbalion. Basically, it's just a
no,
treatise on natural law.
that's the
Law
same.
of polarity, a law of,
Oh, okay, yeah. Is that the same
you
guy that
know,
wrote The Prophet, Khalil Gibran?
no, it's just by three initiates. It's a like it was written during the theosophical thing, right? A
Right.
lot of people think, oh, that's bad, it's this or that. But basically, it's just a book about how the law of polarity works, the law of rhythm, all of those things. And that really resonated with me. I'm like, oh, wow, this is kind of cool. And then I picked up Asclepius. Have you ever read Asclepius?
I have
Okay.
not. I will though.
Okay. So I picked up the Hermetica. Now, because everything's polarized, right? You have the wackadoodles who in the secret societies. But if you actually read the Hermetica, especially the Asclepius part, you'll see why it resonated, right?
Okay.
Right. And so then there's little things. And then it occurred to me, probably 2 or 3 years in, what are you looking for? You know where it is, right? You know where it is. You know it's there. You know it's everything. You know it loves you. Why are you still looking inside yourself in these books, in all these different religions? Some resonated with me and some didn't.
Yeah.
Some I stayed completely away from. And so, anyway, so that's kind of like my spiritual journey where I'm like, oh, I understand this. Like one of the things I've learned is everything's vibration and frequency.
Yeah.
It really is. Even scientists are like, everything's vibration and frequency, right?
Yeah.
Even our DNA. And so I have completely lost track of where we're at. I think I was talking to you about my friends.
Yeah.
So
Just keep going.
getting back, because I'm a talker when I'm going to admit to you that I'm excited to be able to talk to somebody about these things. So my youngest daughter also experiences the things that I do. They're different. She has different experiences, but she experiences it, and she's the only person I can talk to about it
Yeah.
because um, you have to be careful, to be quite honest.
Agreed.
I mean, right?
Yeah.
So probably about 5 years ago, things started happening around the house. Like I'm an avid gardener. It's pretty hard for me to kill something. And I go ahead.
Did you listen to the A Simple Ghost Story podcast?
Yes, I did. I didn't get to
Isn't
the
that
end
the
of it
best
because I
ghost
fell
story?
asleep.
Isn't that the best ghost story ever? Because nothing really happens. You simply become aware of the fact that something's there with you, but nothing
Correct.
move. There's nothing paranormal.
Right, right. And so then I'm like, so I walked by an aloe vera plant. Now, you live in Costa Rica. I'm assuming there's aloe vera plants there. They're
Yeah.
pretty hard to freaking kill. And
Yes.
I woke up one morning, I walked by it, everything was fine. And not 5 minutes later, I walked back and the whole thing was shriveled up dead. That's
Wow.
creepy. That's
Yeah,
creepy. So
that
then
is.
I got scared. Then I got scared.
Never get scared.
And right, but I mean, I wasn't, I, I, you have to, you know that when you have a Abrahamic religion background,
Yeah.
you're immediately thinking there's demons in the house,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
The next thing that happened, so something was trying to scare me. And so things happened, and it was starting to piss me off. It was really starting to piss me off. So then I decided I'm going to ignore it. So I did. But about 6 weeks, I ignored it. And then I sit down and I'm journaling. And I don't know if this is ever, but possibly have something starts trying to move my hand
Wow.
while I'm journaling. So I'm journaling and I'm like, what's going on here? What's going on here? And um and it probably wasn't wise at the time. Now I just don't do it. Now I understand. If something's trying to get me to do something physically, or if something is talking to me in my head,
Yeah.
I question that, right? But at the time, I'm like, okay, what do you want? And it just wrote out a bunch of gibberish. It was all, I'm like, all right, whatever. But I felt it in my hand.
Yeah.
But then positive things started happening. Um, so I was working on a poor credit score. Um, and what I was doing was I had pulled my credit report. I went through everything. I called people, can I pay you off? Or how can we get this paid? And there was one, I had a medical bill from another state I had lived in from a decade or more ago. And I knew at the time I had insurance. So I called them and talked to them. And I'm like, so I just kind of really kind of, it was hard for me. I'm not paying, to me, it was like, I'm not paying you off for this. I don't owe you this money. Um, and so I did all the rigmarole with the legal and all of that. And I said, well, send me everything in the mail. I don't want to talk to you on that. Just send it in the mail. Send me all of the proof that I owe this money. And so I had been checking my credit, everything every day. That's that I was solely 100%. And it was kind of almost like for the credit report, I wasn't trying to get out of anything. I was really trying to do the right thing. I owed these people money and I had the money and I was going to pay these people for the money. And so the very next day, I get on and people say, oh, you don't know, maybe they figured it out or whatever. No, the very next day it was completely gone. They had wiped it clean, paid in full.
Wow.
So all of these little things were happening that were really positive for me. And so basically it came down to I personally believe that I have negative things that meander in and out, me personally. They kind of meander in and out. Like the other night, I was lying in bed and I felt a real dense energy and kind of just got out of bed to ignore it. Because in my experience, if you ignore them, they go away. However, I also have this positive kind of being with me. I call them people because that's what they are. They're really the vibrate their frequency is completely different.
Yeah.
They don't they let me make my own decisions. They don't interfere in decisions that I make, but they are there and they do give me advice. I just have to be honest, you
Yep.
know. And most of the time that advice um um is there love involved to them, they one of the things they taught me is that love is a vibration, and remember there's only one vibration, the
Yep.
source, right?
Yep.
um um Yeah, and they're so when I talk about polarity, for me, when we live in a dual universe,
Yeah.
and I think anything outside of source has duality. They may be a higher frequency, but there's always going to be duality.
Yes.
And so you have a pole, right? So you have up, down, love, hate, or love, apathy, whatever the opposite, the opposing. There's so one of the questions that's asked that I thought was quite interesting in the Kybalion was, when does cold and hot begin? It's different for everyone, isn't it? Well,
Yeah.
so when does cold end and hot begin? All cold and hot is temperature on a
Yeah.
pole,
Yeah.
right? Um, and so I believe that not only so for my own polarity, I came onto this earth so polarized to the feminine, right? Very polarized to the feminine. And then you have people who have the gamut. Like there's, feminine, more effeminate men and kind of butchy women and all of that kind of thing, or tomboys is what we used to call them, right? And there was nothing
Yeah.
wrong with that. Um, and so that's in my experience, they're also polarized, right? So when someone tells me, no, it's all evil. Well, how do you know?
Yeah.
How do you know what is the cause and effect, right?
Yeah.
So what, you have a physical reaction to creepiness, you get the chills and you get your heart starts palpitating and your mind wants to start going a million miles an hour, run, 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 run,
Yeah.
right? Um, that's a pretty good way to tell. I mean, unless you're already negatively polarized. So anyway, that's just to give you the idea of how I think of. So these things, um, the ones that are more positive kind of don't really interfere in my free will,
Yeah.
but they do make cool things happen.
Yeah.
And the best, so am I talking too much?
No,
I can get really like, shut up, Jody, like
no, 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 no. Don't think that again. Go, keep going.
okay. They do make cool things happen. And the last cool thing that happened was I have to go back about a year. And so I've gone through this awakening process. I had really, really cleaned out my life, right? Like a big thing for me is morality.
Hmm.
There's basic morality that we all have. We call it a conscience. And questioning myself, really lifting myself out of a lot of darkness, um, both internal and external. And I was vaccinated, right? So I spent 2020 in my apartment watching CNN. So you know where my mindset was. That's all I need to say, right?
Yeah.
And then Biden gets elected. And not even 5 months later, my daughter and I look at each other going, and all this news is coming out. And we're like, isn't that what Trump said? Wait a minute. What's going on here?
Yeah.
So I went down the conspiracy theory rabbit hole. Now, some things I think are absolutely ridiculous.
Hmm.
Some things I think this is a limited. Hey, Mount, come on, people. This is
Yeah.
clearly, you're being messed with here. But there are things that are true. And to be honest with you, they can the whole synopsis, the whole summary of what is going on in this world is found in your book. It really is.
Thank you.
I'm
Thank
not,
you very
I'm
much for saying that. And I do say to people, look, you might have to read it a few times. The language is simple, but it is deceptively dense. Like
right.
there, and as I started doing the podcast, it occurred to me, I said, Bruce, you just kind of incidentally blew up the theory of evolution. There's no way we could go from shitting in holes to where we are now in 3 generations.
Mm-hmm.
And
We came here just like we are.
yeah, and so you understand why I wrapped it in my family story, because it's 4 generations. It starts with the grandfathers and ends with my son, and they're the exact same 4 generations of the center of the book. starting in like 1900 with the illumination of cities and rapid
Mm-hmm.
transportation, and most importantly, the dislocated voice, starting with the radio. And people don't stop and think about how much this has changed us. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
for thousands of years before that, it was a train ride, a boat ride, or you got on a horse, or you walked, or you took a bicycle, right? There
One
was,
of the,
yeah.
go ahead.
So that, but
Sometimes I get out of the shower and I say, thank you, thank you, thank you for letting me be born when there's showers.
yeah, yeah. I actually wash with cold water but I have a steam room built. I just haven't set up the heating system, and I have a sauna built. I just haven't bought the fire thing yet. And but you get used to it. And I tell everybody who comes and visits me, I said, look, you're just gonna have to, we wash with like a bucket of cold water. And
Mm-hmm.
when you get used to it, it's extremely invigorating.
It is. Sometimes I'll come in from the garden
Yeah.
and I'll just be covered, right? Just covered and in sweat and dirt and weeds and all of those things. And I get in the shower and I'll turn it on cold. I mean, I appreciate some many Western it's conveniences that others don't have, right? But so about a year ago, I read all this stuff and I got very immersed in it, and I became very, it was like I became so on at the end of August, early September 2023, I basically came in the house, sat on a chair, and just sat there for probably until about 2 months ago. It was awful. I just became like, there's a word I'm looking for where nothing matters. It doesn't matter what I do. Nothing matters. This world is a big shithole. And there's no
Dis
way that we can defeat
Despondent?
this evil. What?
Despondent, is that the word?
Despondent is a good word.
Yep.
But there's another word. But anyway, where like there's nothing I can do. There's nothing I can do to help this world. It's all just evil. I was to the point where everything I saw on the news was a lie. Everything, oh, this is that. And I became, sometimes I would get angry, but mostly it was just like, what's the use?
Yeah.
What's the use? Um, and then I was talking to someone. I love X. I freely admit I am a political junkie. I have opinions and I express them.
Yeah. Me
And
too. I did.
the brown boots will be at my door.
Yeah.
But I started talking to a guy on there, super nice guy, an anarchist, um, homeschooler, lived in the middle of nowhere, just a nice guy. We talked for a short period of time, and he kind of pushed me towards a couple of books. One was The Holographic Universe,
Yeah.
and
Albert.
another one, right. I haven't started Holographic Universe because I got your book instead.
Thank you.
But I read, hold on, um, something, The Wild Pendulum.
I don't know that one.
Okay. Oh, Stalking the Wild Pendulum. It's by Itzhak Bentov on the mechanics of consciousness. And I it was amazing. I was like, oh, that makes so much sense. That makes so much sense.
Yeah.
Um, it it just made so much sense to me.
So
And then
I just want to interject for people. So I've read The Holographic Universe by Talbot. I think it was published in 92. But what people we do live in a kind of a matrix, but the energy that creates and sustains it is divine. Because when you say that word, because they've been programming us with science fiction since Star Trek. And so people get despondent when they think, oh, it's a hologram. And they think, oh, there's some Wizard of Oz out there in the cosmos behind a curtain. It's not like that. It's actually the hologram is really the body of God, as everything is
Hmm.
formed by the energy of God. So
Hmm.
I just want to say that because people may go out and get the book and maybe erroneously think that that's what I think is going on. Um, and as intellectuals get into this field, especially in physics, they don't understand it spiritually. It's like
Mm-mm.
spooky act, there's spooky action at a distance. You mean the way druids could communicate across thousands of kilometers 4,000 years ago, just with their
Hmm.
consciousness? Is that what you mean, spooky action? We figured this out. And the thing about the cycle we're in now is we objectify everything. Everything goes through this subject object matrix, which is the fulcrum of the scientific method. Spiritual living is destroying the subject object. Forget the formulas. You don't know it if you don't experience it. If,
Hmm.
if you understand spooky action from a distance through calculus, you don't understand it. The spiritual person is further ahead than the guy with the PhD or the gal with the PhD in physics. That's all
Everyone
I
is
have to
so,
say. It's your podcast. Keep going.
oh no. So everyone is so, I'm going to interject on my story of my despondency at learning what was really going on in the world.
Yeah.
Everyone is so afraid of AI and Neuralink and all of that. And I'm like, why? Why? They can't. They cannot extract your consciousness or anybody else's and put it into a machine. A computer can read brainwaves, but it doesn't know what it only reads them and they have a best guess. People think that these scientists and all of these people are so advanced and all right. Really, let's think about that. Outside of communication, outside of a phone, streaming, internet, what advancements have we made since the 1960s?
Not many.
I mean, even the physicist Weinstein says that physics hasn't made any major new discoveries since the 60s.
Yeah.
And so they use it as a means to scare us, right? And then they get all that anxiety energy up in the air. And even I have to remind myself sometimes that, we give them way too much credit. Some people, I heard a guy one time and he said, oh, these beings have IQs thousands of times greater than ours. And I'm like,
Yeah.
I've experienced a lot of stupid, invisible people. I'm
Yeah.
sorry. It's a
Yeah.
universal trait, stupidity and idiocy.
Yeah.
So getting back to the despondency, right? So I'm sitting on the chair. I'm taking care of the bare minimum,
Hmm.
asking myself and asking source, what's the point of this? Why am I here? What's the freaking point? And then I read Stalking the Wild Pendulum and kind of like asking. So my daughter has a college degree. She has a mathematics, and so I ask her a lot of times, "What does that mean, hologram?" So I understood what the hologram was. Oh, okay, I see. And then we're driving down the road. So to get into Sacramento, you have to drive down a highway. And you're driving in between rice fields. And during late winter, early spring, those rice fields are just kind of filled with water and garbage, right? I mean, because they've right. And so there's a lot of ducks and geese.
Yep.
And my daughter looks over and she goes, Mom, look at that. And what we see on the rice field are ducks a massive flock of ducks suspended in midair. I am not kidding you. I have a witness. And it wasn't like they were gliding on the wind. No, these ducks. So if here's the rice field, these ducks were suspended at takeoff, and so you have a whole flock of ducks all going up, suspended at takeoff. And I kind of slowed down and we're looking and we're like, oh my gosh, what is going on? What is that? And basically it was a glitch. It was a
Yeah.
glitch. It was a glitch. So we get off the freeway going down towards my mother's and we still see it. And then we're like, no, that didn't happen. That didn't happen. That didn't happen. And then I told her, I said, maybe what we really saw is they've strung up something over the fields and there's like things bobbing. So what we'll do on the way back is we'll check it out and see if they were just hanging, if they have newfangled thing going on in the rice fields. No, completely empty. No
That's
birds.
incredible.
It shocked me. It
Yeah.
shocked me. It was like, and it wasn't, there was no fear in this. It was almost as if the creator was showing me something that very few people get to see
Yeah.
or experience, saying, now get off your ass.
Yeah.
Get up off your ass and do what you need to do.
Oh, I couldn't agree more. Yeah, you've been blessed. So, I'm starting to think that the traumatic childhood is actually a blessing as you get into the last third of your life, right?
Mhm,
Because, you know, so I'm very grateful for it because I don't think I would have gone into spiritual work without it. And my
mhm,
family is just completely, just lost in the whole material delusion and their
mhm.
various titles and positions in society. And it's kind of sad to see, but wow, what an experience to see a glitch in the matrix like that. May I tell you one glitch in the matrix story?
Yes, yes, go ahead.
So the book that started this whole cycle of weird nonfiction, I used to write literary fiction. I wanted to be like a Philip Roth or a Cormac McCarthy or an Alice Munro, like a serious literary writer. I published a book in Canada in 2007. I got 5-star reviews in every major daily newspaper. And then and when I left Canada, I said to my friends, look, if you hear I'm working on a book, hire somebody to kill me because I had just lost so much time and money working on novels that really didn't make any money, and I didn't want to start applying for grants the way Canadian artists do. And then I was up here a few years, and I said, you know what, I want to get back to writing. And the book that started it all was Stardust Ranch. And John Edmonds told me that when the Greys are coming into the house, he said they first peek through, and he said, Bruce, it's just like they're pulling back shower curtains and the face peeks through. And if the coast is clear, they step through. And I said, so the entire reality we live in is just like a fabric you can open up and walk through. And he said, absolutely, absolutely. And geez, I remember that just sending a chill up my back. So this whole physical reality we live in is some spiritual playpen before we're allowed out into the universe. Is the
Mhm.
way I see it. It's like a nursery of some form.
Yeah. Um, just a note on the Grays. So my friends, the good guys, I was my daughter has seen UFOs. I haven't. I'm fairly certain, right? So the majority of my
Good.
experiences is in
With with
interdimensional.
what you've told me already, you could just ask, and within a week you'd have an experience.
Yeah, I choose not to, and the reason why is I was like, all of these stupid satellite photos or whatever, we never get a good picture, right? We never actually see a real picture of a gray. And I'm like, I just want to meet a gray and have a conversation with them. And immediately they said, no, you don't.
Yeah, they're
Very
nasty.
ad. You do not want to meet a gray ever. And I'm like, okay, believe you, because I've met some, I've met when you have little the negatives going on in your house, they do things that
Yeah.
are so extremely, they'll goose you in the ass. I mean, it's just like, whoa, right? It's one of the reasons I have dogs, to be quite honest with you. I have um especially one dog, he's very like staring at the wall. And he's
Yeah.
only, I mean, things like that is like, oh, but
Do you know that the number one recommendation given to people who are being abducted is to move to a rural location and get big dogs?
yeah.
So you actually followed the recipe without even knowing it.
Yeah, I don't have, oddly enough. So my impression of myself, um, and I haven't quite put it all together yet or come to any kind of decision because I am one of those people that unless I can have an experience, and most likely an inner experience, I can only go by what I believe and what I'm told.
Yeah.
And I have been told that I actually that Earth is not. I'm not well versed in Earth. Let's just say in this universe. I'm not well versed in this universe. And what leads me to believe that it may be right, um, is the fact that since I was a child, so you understand what it's like growing up with just negative parents,
Yeah.
right? I grew up with a mother whose whole life, so she's a boomer or a silent generation. She's 82 now. She has Alzheimer's. But she was mean. She was mean. She was a single mom. She divorced my dad in 69, and she was a single mom in the 70s. And it was all about materials, having things. I remember she bought a Camaro. She had several husbands. Her last husband, I think, was a blessing for me because he was the nicest, most loving man. He came into my life at about 9 years old, and I think he was put there as a buffer because she was mean, right? Like,
Yeah.
uh, and everything was about stuff. My mom showed her love by buying me things, but the verbal and emotional abuse caused just so much trauma. However, my entire life, up until I was about 45 years old, I'm one of those people who, when I meet you, I automatically trust and assume you're a good person.
Yeah.
I have no initial read, which is odd because if I talk to somebody for an hour, 2 hours, I have this kind of knowing like, oh, this person's full of shit, or right, you kind of know like, oh, but I never had the idea that like this person's a total liar. That might mean they're a bad person. I always trusted. I remember sitting in a classroom, and this was in high school in the early 80s, and guys were just mean. I'm sorry. You guys were kind of we hadn't broken out of the be an asshole all the time thing, but there was a very frumpy this is just an example of what I went through how I felt like this whole world is like I couldn't understand it. Um, there was a really frumpy substitute teacher in class, and she said, okay, your teacher wants you to just read from your textbooks. And she sits down, and thinking back, I now know she was slightly frightened, right? Here's a class full of 30 teenagers, and a lot of them belligerent. And so the guys in the class started throwing spitballs at her. And then the longer she didn't do anything about it, she just kind of went back in because she started kind of shrinking into herself. Then it was big balls of paper. And I remember sitting there with tears streaming down my face, not understanding why they were so mean. I couldn't understand it. And everyone else was laughing and all of that. So I kind of went through my whole life. And it wasn't until I suffered two major assaults that I sat back and went, maybe despite what your inside tells you, you need to use some common sense as well and just assume that not everybody's a nice person.
Yeah.
You should maybe let them show you who they are, and
Yeah.
then make those decisions. And so it leads me to believe, like, I mean, it's always felt this world has always felt very alien to me.
Yeah.
There's some things I just cannot understand. It's
Yeah.
like, why, you know what I'm saying?
I
And
do.
maybe I'm not unusual. Maybe I'm just putting shit on, thinking, well, maybe I just don't want to be from here.
Yeah.
I don't know. So,
Yeah, it feels a bit alien to me as well. And yeah. Yes, we were very mean. Um, I was just an absolutely horrible kid, but it was because of the environment I was raised in, but it was just really bad. And then I snapped out of it at 17, turning 18. Um,
mhm.
but yeah, I remember how mean we were back then in like growing up in the 70s and stuff, going through junior high and high school, and it was just mean. And
And I'm not setting aside the fact that girls aren't women and females aren't mean.
I
We're just
think
mean in different ways. Men are
I
actively mean. Men are,
I think it's
they'll punch
flipped.
you in the face.
I think it's flipped. I think the really aggressive and destructive gender is the female now. But
I see that.
it's more emotional. It's more like humiliation and all that sort of stuff.
We have a saying in my girls and I have three girls and a boy. But my girls and I have a saying that, the difference between a man and a woman is a man will punch you in the face. A
Yeah.
woman will wait till you've turned your back and then she'll slide the knife in.
Yeah.
That's the difference. And which
Push you over the
which
cliff.
is worse? What?
Yeah. Or push you over the cliff.
Right.
Yeah. We we
Right.
say we say that amongst ourselves, men. Like I'd rather just get the punch in the face. It's all over and very quickly and so on and so forth.
Mhm.
So can I pick your brain a little bit about the book and your reaction to it and what you got out of it and maybe anything that you didn't know before reading the book? And what do you think is
Yes.
unique? What do you think is unique about this book, as opposed to all the things out there, all the David Icke books and all like what's unique about this book, The Devil in Us, a memoir of you and me?
You're not afraid to use the word devil.
Yeah,
Um, there's some real honesty, and you're using language that people readily understand in the West. You're
yeah,
not trying to write a universal book. I'm assuming you're trying to wake the West up.
yeah,
Um, um, it's it so I've attempted David Icke books. And it's I'm not going to go there. It's thought. There's thought behind it.
yeah,
Um, right. You're trusting your instincts and what you have personally learned. You're not, you do use, like, oh, there's this person or that person or this person that said this, but you're not attempting to back it up with this thick of what do they call it in the back of the book, with your sources.
yeah,
Um, it comes off as, in my opinion, more honest and less tinfoil hat.
yeah. You're either going to get it or not.
Hmm.
Okay, and so the book is written for people specifically like you who are having experiences and trying to put it all together. Like, what is going on here? What is going on in the West? Like, how did we arrive at this state of spiritual dilapidation where we don't raise our children anymore, where we abuse children, murder children, rape children? And how did our institutions get so bad? Medicine, education, justice, everything.
Hmm.
And like there has to be an etymology to this. Just the way you can track the source of a word. And I localize it at the Industrial Revolution. And then when you get into it and you start to research it, it really is a plan. It's basically a plan of, there's what we're up against are human beings who you could say are also spiritual, but they're negative leaning or they're multidimensional. and they're masters of magic, and science is a form of magic. Ritual is the antecedent of formula. It's sequence and proportion. Okay. So a recipe is a formula, but if you've ever studied ritual magic, it's very precise, right? So
Mhm.
it's all coming out of this culture, and they mean to take the world and to kill off most of us and keep however many they want as slaves for whatever purpose. It
Mhm.
it literally is that dark. And that's the case I'm trying to make in the book. It came together beautifully, like just as the chapters flowed, 1947, blood, explaining what the devil is. And people, like, one of the reasons I have this opinion of the devil is I've read a lot of scripture. And in everything from native mythologies to most of the Eastern stuff to, Zoroastrianism, everything. And nobody characterizes the negative principality the way we do in the Abrahamic system. And so what the Abrahamic system did is it took an existence which should be circular and turned it into a linear plane. And
Mhm.
this is what causes all the tension in people. Am I going to go to hell? Am I, and these sorts of things. This is what produces the extreme violence we see in Islam, right?
Mhm.
I only get one life, and the easiest way to get to heaven, because living the moral code of the Quran is quite difficult. The easiest way for me to assure the value of this life, which is entry to heaven, is to be a martyr. And so there's all these, like, they're almost like human drones.
You know
You've
what
been
I
in the
think?
military, they're drones.
So if
Now,
you look at the symbolism on, can I interrupt?
yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
So for me on the Abrahamic, if you look at it's so I don't believe the Abrahamic religions are worshiping the creator. I think that they're worshiping, I think that one side worships a storm war god,
Yeah.
a male god. And if you look at the symbolism between Christianity and Judaism
Hmm.
and Islam,
Yeah.
you clearly have two different gods.
Yes.
And one is male and the other is female. Neither are very nice. So it's almost as if you have two different negative gods. And they probably are godlike powers, right?
Yeah.
They're having their own little war and they're using them to do it.
I couldn't
That's
agree.
that's what I see, because when I see the moon, that crescent moon, I always think, because I mean, to me, everything's so much symbolism in this world. And if you recognize it, you're like, oh, that's like, I'm sure that Muslims would be very offended to me to say you have a very feminine religion.
Yeah.
You just is.
Yeah.
But
It
anyway, I just wanted to
absolutely.
interrupt on that sometimes I think there's two it's almost as if something that we can't see is also fighting a war to kill each other.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. That's been an hour. You want to do this again sometime?
Sure, sure. Yeah. No, I was wondering, do you have an iPhone?
I do. Yeah,
Oh, okay. So I can email you my phone number.
sure.
And if you want to contact me or do this again, that's
Yeah.
fine.
All right. So that
Uh,
that
I
opens up
I
that
hope this
opens up
I hope
FaceTime, right?
um well, it's the blue. That's why. So if somebody else, if somebody else has an iPhone, me or they can contact me out of the States, because I can't get a phone call from, or a text or anything. But you can email too. It's no big deal.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah, this has been fantastic. And
Well, I hope it wasn't too convoluted. Sometimes I go off and on tangents, and so
yeah, that's fine. It was not convoluted for me
okay.
at all. At all. And
Yeah.
do you harvest your chickens?
I do not. Actually, was vegetarian for a long time, went back to meat, and over the last couple of months since I saw the ducks. Something's been nagging at me, like, why don't you go back to, vegetarianism? I just have a couple of chickens. I had one die. I have a dog who thinks that chickens are rats. I have a little ratter. Got a hold of one. But no, I just have two, just enough to give me another a couple of eggs. I'm gonna enlarge my flock. But yet no, I don't harvest.
We
Um,
live remarkably similar. I
really.
also I was vegetarian for 10 years before coming to Costa Rica. And then I ate meat for a couple years. And I even harvested pigs. I learned how to butcher a pig. And when you do it up on the mountain, it's a huge process. You got to get up at 5 a.m. and boil a big metal drum of water to get the first layer of skin off before you start the butchering process and everything. And then after about 2 years, my inner nudge said no more. It's not good. Like just stop eating meat. So I stopped eating meat. But we have chickens. I eat a lot. I'm not a vegan. I eat a lot of cheese and I eat
Hmm.
a lot of eggs. I eat eggs every day. They're a miracle food. They're just like I couldn't do without them.
Right. Well, yeah, one of the reasons, well, I feel like since I started eating meat again, that it's kind of affected my inner life, my
Yeah.
spiritual life. Not super negative, but just kind of like that naggy kind of like why. But now I've noticed that it doesn't taste the same. So I can't, I don't grow or my own meat or anything like that. And to buy um, organic homegrown meat would cost me thousands of dollars a year. But
Yeah.
I've noticed they're doing something. The meat tastes different. Like I got some New York strip steaks on sale and it was like they're full of gristle. That shouldn't happen.
Yeah.
And so like little things nagging at me, things tasting fake, So
Yeah.
yeah, so we have a lot in common. I think that's why I'm like, oh, I gotta talk to this guy.
Yeah. Like I never knew to what degree I was a country guy. I've lived in New York, Toronto, Taipei, Taiwan, like some of the biggest and most dynamic cities in the world. I was a literary writer. I went to book launches, just a total urbanite. And then I
Mhm.
came to the rainforest and it was like coming out of the closet. I'm like, Bruce, you're a hillbilly. Like I love it. I could never You can't get me off this mountain. My wife's got to drag me to the grocery store twice a month. I don't even want to go, right? And
Yeah, that's what's happened to me. Like I have to go see my mom a couple of times a week, but my daughter lives about 30 miles farther than her. And like it's like, oh gosh, and she lives in a very suburban, it takes a lot out of me.
yeah. So how far are you away from like a big city?
Oh, Sacramento's only like 50 miles away from me, 45, 50 miles. So,
Oh, okay.
so it's
So yeah.
30, yeah, it's not a big deal. I can do it in 30 minutes, right? Because we can
Wow,
drive fast as we want here. But
that's
my
good.
mom lives on the very edge of the county. And so like going to her house is not a big deal, right?
Mm.
But going deeper in, like when I have to go to the VA or whatever, it's very like um like so you know how you dress when you're rural?
Yeah.
I mean, I'm like, today I was like, oh shit, I gotta do my hair and put some makeup on.
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, I only put on a collared shirt to do podcasts. The rest of the time
Right,
it's a cut off t-shirt. Cletus from The Simpsons is a genius. That's how you dress when you don't have to impress anybody. So,
right,
because it's the most comfortable, right? It's the most
right.
comfortable. Are the podcasts as I begin to go over my own book and talk about it and podcast about it, is what I'm saying lining up with how you interpreted the book?
Yes, yes, actually. And I actually like last night I listened to your most recent, but I because I had listened to many of the podcasts before I started reading the book, when I opened the book, it was like, oh wow. And so I had all that extra information. So it's not like it's It is. It's helpful. So when you've read the book and then you listen to your podcast, you're getting more information and you're also clarifying a lot of things.
Yeah.
Um, like the for me personally, the stories of Claire Ustabat, those are, you know, um very disturbing, right? And so in the book, it wasn't easier to read because there wasn't so much information. But in the podcast, you're providing more information,
Yeah.
more stories, that allows me to pause and to, um, so yes, it's helpful there. So you're adding information or you're even clarifying information.
So
Um,
if people truly understood how bad these people are, like Macron and Trudeau and Biden and most certainly Gavin Newsom, I mean, they
mhm,
they go to the rituals. Because of what the agenda is now, everybody in power has to have gone through the rituals because otherwise they're not going to have the stomach to do what Team Dark wants to do, which is kill massive numbers of people. So to make sure that everybody's in place, most of them are Trudeau is generational. I think Biden is
mhm.
also probably
So is
generational.
Gavin Newsom
Yeah.
is.
Yeah.
You're right.
So
I mean, isn't Pelosi his aunt or something like that? I mean, they're all related. That's what's creepy to me.
very.
They're all related.
Oh,
But
it's very creepy. Yeah, very creepy.
yeah,
One big inbred family.
uh-huh.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Okay, this has been
no,
fantastic.
yeah, it was really nice meeting you and talking to you and
Yeah,
yeah,
we'll do a couple podcasts every month or one every week if you want. And we can just talk about whatever you want to talk about. Now that you have gotten over your fear, because I think you had a
right. Well, I was telling my daughter, I said only like he's only getting like 25 or between 25 and 50 views and blah 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 and all of that. And she's like, but that's not why you're doing this. And that really isn't why I'm doing it.
yeah,
Um, I think to be honest with you, I have something that to say. I have experiences to share and this is especially with you. I feel it's easy to you make it very easy to just barf everything out. But I have things that I'd like to share. If it helps one person, right?
that's the way I look at it. That is the way I look at it. So people like what they like now, and there's no explaining why they like it. But I mean, Stardust Ranch has sold about 7,000 copies. It's 5,000 copies to be a New York Times bestseller. So I'm technically a best-selling author. But the UFO, I've done the whole UFO thing. I've explained it, but I understand also that people have to go through it themselves and digest it and fit it into their cosmology and how does this redefine what I think is going on spiritually? The UFOs are a part of it. There's absolutely no doubt about it. But at times I get a little frustrated with how infatuated people are with just nonsense and shallow stuff, right? Just
Right. Like my biggest peeve right now is flat Earth. Like, oh,
Oh yeah, yeah,
I hope
yeah.
we
That,
can't be friends. It's all everything's a circle.
yeah, that started in some CIA cell office where I'm sure they had an internal
Well,
bet about
who
how
used
stupid
to
people
murder,
are.
who used to murder people for saying that the earth was round? The Catholic Church. It's
Yeah,
like
yeah, yeah. There
so
you.
anyway, yeah, that's just my little pet peeve. But yeah, no, I'd be glad just I'll email you.
Okay,
Yeah, and then you could like you could give a subject too. So don't put it all on me.
I will do that. All right, it's been a
Okay.
pleasure. Bye bye.
Yeah, thank you. Bye-bye.